Right. Okay, we have people joining in, so I will just start already with our introduction until the rest of the people join. So, so we have about almost 90 people in already. So thank you all for joining today. I will say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever we're joining from. And welcome to this session today. And we are really, really glad to have you. Today we'll be talking about understanding the changes and transformation, in the job scope of an executive assistant or a personal assistant. And here we have three wonderful women with us today who are going to share their experiences with us. We have Sandra, we have Mallory, and we have Lucy with us. So hope you have a great time and enjoy everything today. What we would do during the presentation as delegates and attendees, you will not have the opportunity to speak live. But if you have any question and you wouldn't want to forget, you can just type it in the Q&A box that is available to you. And our speakers will answer your questions after the presentation. And after the presentation, if you would like to ask a question live, we will unmute your mic so you can speak to the speakers. Yes? So I would let the first person go now so you can start.
Awesome. All right, good everyone. Good morning. For me, I'm in Alberta and my name is Mallory Murphy. I'm an executive assistant to Don Cooper. I have been an executive assistant to Don for the last almost 3 years. In that time, my role has changed from assistant, receptionist, administration, and now on to full-time executive assistant and hopefully moving into chief of staff as a career path. With that being said, I'm also a Colby certified consultant, which has been part of my COVID training, I guess you would say, an opportunity to learn some more. So part of my presentation today is what I want to talk to you about is a bit about Colby, how the workplace has changed for executive assistants and how it can be better. So I want to start off with a few questions, kind of getting some input from you guys, getting some feelings out there, and then we can move to a solution. So do you ever feel that your relationship with your executive has changed since COVID, maybe before COVID? Are you feeling frustrated with where you're at now? Or maybe you were frustrated with where things were at before. Your executive just not listening to you or being told to do things one way and it just completely goes against what your gut instinct is telling you. Okay, so now what about this? Have you ever been told to do that one thing and you're told exactly how to do it and it is just not how you want to do it at all? Your gut tells you, no, it's easier to do it this way. I can't do it this way, but you're told exactly how to do it and we're assistants, so we do it exactly how we're told to do it. Now what if, just for a minute, you imagine your executive knew that that wasn't how you instinctively worked? What if they knew that there was a better way for you to do this to be more successful? So somewhere at your core, you have an instinct to accomplish that same task in a different way to get the same results. So those human instincts are in this, they're there, but yours is likely different from mine, likely different from your spouse, and very likely different from your bosses or your executives. So understanding those instincts, as well as your instincts, as well as your executives, is going to help you amplify that relationship. It's going to help take away a lot of that stress and strain and put that emphasis back on being productive together. It's going to push you towards so much more success. Now, who doesn't want that, really? So as you're watching this webinar today, maybe it's live, maybe it's recorded days or weeks from now, you're here for one reason. We all are. We want to be better. And I applaud you for that. As an EA, I've always found it was my job to push to be better, to take initiative, and to keep up with my executive, with his thirst to grow. A little background on my executive: if there is a chance to learn anything, he's read it. He's listened to the podcast, he's watched the webinar, and he has a wealth of information. So starting to work from him, I didn't know anything, so I've had to catch up. Now, it was just that. I had to follow, I had to catch up, and it was always about putting my executive first. Very rarely do we get an executive that slows down for a minute, and starts to realize that the quickest way for them to reach that next level in their career is by tapping into their superpower. That's you. So, if you were to think for a moment about how it would feel if your executive came to you and said, I know you like to research. I know you like to get all those details. I don't. I need this decision to be made, but I don't want to do the research because I'm not good at it. It's going to take me way too much time. You're really good at it and you really love to do it. Not just are you good at it, but you like to do it. It's a strength of yours. Can you look into the options for me? Give me 3 suggestions as to what the best ones are, and then I can make a decision. They just like to make decisions. They're quick starters. They just want to get it done. How would it feel knowing that instead of having to clean up the mess or tell them later, hey, that wasn't the better option, you were able to do what you like to do, that strength that you have to naturally research, to naturally find those things and give it to them. And they do what they're good at, what their strength is, to make it happen. So for some of you, you might already be in this relationship with your executive. You might, not all of us have that love of deep fact finding. I do, but not for every project. But when my executive knew my strengths and we were able to start to use them more, oh my goodness, we saw so much progress. The relationship changed. That stress and strain of they want me to do this, but it's not done that way, but I'm gonna have to do it anyway, was removed. It was, hey, I can get this done for you. I do it the way that I see the strengths being done. And he understood. In my case, my executive is a man, but he understood how I could present him that information. Now I understand that he's not going to give me the information I need, so I have to reframe my questions to him. I want all the details. He just wants to make a decision. So how do we work together? How do we understand those natural instincts to build that relationship, to overcome some of those hurdles, especially today? For some of you, you may have adjusted from seeing your executive all day, every day, being involved in their every move, to now not seeing them at all unless you're on a Zoom call. That is a huge change. That is a huge stress on your relationship because you're now no longer watching the body language. You're not picking up on those cues that you would see and hear and feel. You're having to be instinctive. But if you don't know what their instincts are, it's really hard to pick up on those. So how do you go about finding out what these instincts and superpowers are? How do you find your strengths? So I've been working with my executive to create a lot of strength in that relationship between executives and their assistants. I've come up with a service, and we both feel that this is going to be a game changer for assistants of any kind, and executives, entrepreneurs, visionaries, however you term who you report to. So many of you have probably taken a personality test, an IQ test, or some sort of variation. These are looking at your cognitive and affective sides of your brain. So how you feel, your affective, and more towards how your smarts in your cognitive. But there's a third part that often gets overlooked, and that's your conative. That's your instinctive, how you do things, if you were left to do them naturally on your own. So, the beginning I said I was a Kolbe consultant. Kolbe is an assessment that was created by a lovely lady named Kathy Kolbe, and it is amazing. It's a quick assessment that you take online, and there's many different variations of it. But what it does is you sit down and you answer the questions if you were free to be yourself. If you were free to do what you naturally do, how would you respond? And at the end of this assessment, you are perfect. Everybody's strengths are perfect. How we blend those together, how we identify how they work together is where we need to focus on. So my executive and I have really, really stressed the idea that this needs to happen. I think personally, I had this completed to me when I first started with him. We did a Kolbe assessment And it was a game changer for me. I'd always been hired for a job and just expected to pick up wherever they were. There was no lead in, there was no, here's how I work. It was, here's your job, figure it out. And I'm sure many of you can relate to that. With my executive, it was a little bit different. It was quite the hiring process, but in the end, I have an executive that I would follow anywhere because I feel good about that relationship. Now, it's not perfect and we're still learning, but there's no stress and strain in the sense that if he's doing something that bothering me or I'm not seeing as it being right, when I take a step back and I look at what his Kolbe score is, I understand that that's just against my grain. It's perfect for him, but it's not for me. So when you're looking at Kolbe assessments, there's three main when we look at how they can impact assistants and their executives. The first is called the Kolbe A, and we determine where your natural strengths are, as well as theirs. It'll give you a score of 4 numbers, and those 4 numbers help us identify where those strengths are, where you lie. The second is, as an assistant, you would evaluate your job and your role, where you feel that you are now, how you are responding to things in that role. Then you have a Kolbe C, which is when you have your executive evaluate your role, how they see it, how they view it happening. And from there, we can help identify where is that stress and strain. Start working on some tools and tricks and coaching to start overcoming them. And sometimes it's just a quick, simple, you don't like this, they like this is how you naturally interact. And it's just such an eye-opener for you. So when you are looking at your relationships with your executives now, and you are seeing that you're working from home and you're not getting to talk to them all day, every day, you're not getting those answers as you need them because now you're having to get them through a text message or a phone call or an email. Are you always getting that communication the way that you need to get it? And are you giving it the way that they need to get it? That's something else we need to look at is how is that communication being given and taken, right? We also need to look at where our roles and responsibilities are now lying in the sense of virtual meetings. We don't necessarily always have to have someone taking meetings notes anymore. There's a lot of AI that's out there that it can transcribe the whole conversation without ever having to be present. How is that role changing for you? And how can we leverage those strengths that you have and your executives and making sure that you guys are aligned and driving past and forward into the next year or two beyond with your relationship? Maybe it's just not a good fit and there's a reason why you're pulling your hair out every night, why you dread going into work, but maybe there's a way we can reverse that. So I know that was quick and a lot of information. I'm really excited about it because as an executive assistant, it's taken me a long time to realize why I work the way I do. And when I was able to get that Kolbe score 3 years ago after doing my assessment, it opened my eyes, not just to that relationship with my executive, but we had our entire organization complete these Kolbe tests and assessments, And once they were completed, and I was having difficulties with different personalities, we'll call them, within their organization, I took a step back and was able to look at the Kolbe scores and realize I'm just so different from this person. That doesn't mean that we can't work together. It means I need to adjust how I'm giving this information to them. How we work together needs to be adjusted. We're not all the same. We don't all have the same strengths. We might all have the same skill set. We can all plug numbers into Excel. We can all get coffee. We can all provide presentations, edits, book hotels, scheduling, all those awesome things that we're all really, really good at because that's what makes us EAs or assistants. But what we don't have is that ability to understand our executive in that instinctive way and vice versa. They're not understanding us. So if we could get to the point where they understand what we need, that's a game changer. We are an executive, an entrepreneur, a visionary's superpower. we are the rock stars of this relationship. We are that hidden gem that they don't necessarily are out there broadcasting, hey, this is why I'm successful, but we know it. We're the reason they make it to that meeting on time sometimes. We're the reason why they didn't forget that folder or that person's name, right? We are an integral part of that success. And in order for that just to be amplified 10 times, they need to understand us as well as us understanding them. And that doesn't mean they got to sit down and listen to our whole life story and our woes and get into all that nitty gritty. It's simple. A Kolbe assessment, alignment, communication, and you're done. You can, just with those simple things, move forward. So if it just meant that you've got to take an hour and a half out of your whole month, your executive's month, to change that whole relationship, to make it better because everything's changed already, and you want to continue working together, wouldn't you take that chance? Wouldn't you do that? So I'm going to cut this a little short because now I feel like I'm rambling. But what I want to do is I'm going to share my contact information with you. Like I said, I'm very passionate about this because I feel that this is just such an incredible tool that makes the biggest difference possible. So I'm going to share my contact details with you. If I can get this to work here. And I would love it if you email me any questions that you might have. My cell number's there. You can text me if that's a better way to reach you, or call me. I'm not always the great at answering my phone calls, so email or text is preferred for me. From there, if you're looking at this and going, I'm in, I need this would make my relationship better with my executives, but they're not going to buy in. They're not going to be all about this. They like growth, they like progress, but I'm not sure they would get into this. I did mention my executive buys in. My executive believes in this hugely. He's also a Kolbe consultant. So if you feel like this is something that could make these chaotic times better for you and can relieve some of that stress and strain and make life better, I feel that every assistant can benefit from this. Please contact me. If you're like, I'm in, but my executive won't buy in, let me know. I can put your executive in touch with mine. We can have that conversation. They can talk. Sometimes when they talk to another executive, it's easier to listen to than it is an assistant to an assistant, right? So again, I applaud you for wanting to be better, to overcome all these obstacles. That's what we do as assistants, is we overcome any obstacle thrown at us, no matter how crazy it might seem. And this year has only proven that. So again, my number and my email address are on the screen. Please feel free anytime to get in touch with me. I always try and get back to my emails and my text messages as quickly as possible. But thank you all so much for being on the webinar today. It has been great talking to you, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mallory. That was a great one. If you have any questions for Mallory, you can use the Q&A box and just put your questions in there and we will address it later. So Lucy, over to you.
Unmute. Hello, everyone. I'm Lucy Casabianca, and I have been supporting senior executives for 20 plus years. In my career, I've held a wide range of roles. I started as a first level admin, been called senior admin, coordinator, senior coordinator, executive assistant, manager, office manager. Throughout the 20 years, various roles in different organizations. I went from health and hospitals to the corporate sector. I've worked in customer operations, finance, real estate, facilities. And my role has been very diverse. I've traveled throughout the U.S. and also globally, working on different projects. The reason why I'm telling you all this is because, I've had the opportunity to excel in my field. I had the career path. And, at the end of the day, I came back to being an EA because I felt that the EA role was the most diverse. I like to help people. I think if you're in this role, you have that in your nature. You want to help people. So everything I'm going to show you now is basically my perspective. I am going to share my screen. I'm hoping that you all see the screen. Let me know if you don't. And I would like to put this on. Do you guys all see my screen right now? I hope. I'm not hearing anyone, so let me just make sure.
Yeah, no, we can't see anything yet, Lucy.
Okay, let me go back and see why we can't see the screen. Share. Okay, it says I'm sharing.
Yes, we can
do you
see
guys
it now.
still not see it? Okay, wonderful. So, you know, I gave you that bit of information just so you know that I think being an EA is a great role. Like Mallory stated, we are the rock stars. And, you know, during this journey, I met wonderful people and I've learned so many things. And again, everything I'm about to speak about is basically my perspective. And I am going to start my presentation with a question to everyone. And that is, over the last years, whether you're doing an EA job for 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, what do you feel has not changed over your span of your career? And what do you feel that we are? What is your definition of an EA role? Is there anyone out there? I think you could use your chat. I know you're all muted, but I believe you could use your chat if you would like to answer. Don't be shy. You know, over the last 20 years, I see that an anonymous attendee said we are seeing more of a tech-driven industry on its way, where many of the exec admin tasks are being removed. That is true. And instead, we are becoming strategic business partners with our executives. That is so true. How can we get our admins to increase their knowledge on data science and analytics? That is wonderful, and I'm hoping to touch on that in the presentation that I'm about to show. Anyone else out there have any views on what they feel hasn't changed or what they feel we are? Okay, so, you know, while I was trying to come up with different ways of answering this question, I have come across a quote that I found in the Harvard Business Review. I do a lot of yeah, we are fixers, Angela, that is true, and we are the behind-the-scenes person that make things happen, involves tons of communication. That is absolutely right. So there are so many answers to this question. So what it comes down to is this quote that I found says, executive assistants give companies and managers a human face. They are the troubleshooters, translators, help desk attendants, diplomats, human databases, travel consultants, amateur psychologists, ambassadors to the inside and outside world. The part that really resonated with me is the first sentence stating that we are the human face. So yes, AI has landed and we are now in the world of technology. But one thing that I believe is most important is we are the human face, because at the end of the day, I know, at least for me personally, and for a lot of people I work with, you can email as much as you want and text, because we're getting communicated from so many different directions. At the end of the day, you want that human face. So thank God for Zoom. It's not the real deal, but it's as close as we're going to get right now. And I felt that this was a pretty good, at least high-level explanation of what we are. With that being said, I would like to take a stroll down memory lane, because as I was, trying to get some clarity on, all right, how have our roles changed over the years, I found some information that you all may already know, but there was a lot I didn't know, and I found it kind of cool and interesting, so I thought I'd share it with you. Did you guys know that in the 1800s, 1860 to 1870, most of the clerical roles in the U.S. were all male? It wasn't until the 1870s that women have gradually become the clerical workers in our society. I found that very interesting. And, anything that I picked up and I read about, in the beginning of documentation, office work, and even before that, it was always a male. And, today, from the 1870s and up, more women came into that clerical field. And with that, in 1942, there was a National Secretaries Association was created. And then after that, shortly after that, there was a standard of excellence exams that it was certification for executive assistants. And I kind of find it humorous because that then brought us into the Madman, I call it the Madman series era, where secretaries, and I was part of this because I remember when I first started my career, we were in typing pools and we were in phone pools and we did steno and we made a lot of coffee and we booked meetings. It wasn't more of being a strategic partner. It was more of this is what we need and you go and do it. And there wasn't no interactions with our executives. I felt, at least in my early history, it was more, you were given work and you did it, and you were very compliant about it. There wasn't a point of view. And we did a lot of paper filing. That was then. A little shortly after that, 1972, there was email. I'm not sure if any of you are Lotus Notes boomers. We did the Lotus Notes and the first Microsoft Word being released, and that was like, to me, the beginning of when things started to change. And then in the 1990s, the internet came about, and that is when it basically boomed and landed us to where we are today. And where are we today? Today's EA is becoming more commonplace virtual assistant. I think that was going to be the end game. And I think now with the pandemic, most of us are working from home. Some of us started trickling back into the office. I'm in New York City. We have not trickled back in yet. Not sure when that is going to transpire, but most of us are virtual assistants. I have been lucky enough to be part of teams the past 6 years where, you had to be ready to work wherever you were needed. So I was spread across different departments and different locations. So I had to be able to do my job from wherever I was. And every day it was a different place. And I think it was the best experience for me to do that. I think it put me a little bit ahead of some of my peers who are more stationary admins, and it just got me into the place of running. With today's virtual assistants and with today's EAs, we have all this wonderful technology out there. We have FaceTime, Skype, Google, just to name a few, SharePoint. We don't use paper anymore. We have the mindset to make it a more sustainable environment. So we try not to use resources that are just going to plug up and gunk up our wonderful earth. So we have to be on the top of the game. I mean, if all of you out there think about it, and I'm sure it's all of you, how many software, technology, communication tools are you using in a day? I mean, where it used to be just email or email and Skype, now we have Zoom, Slack, Teams. I look at my computer screen sometimes and I have all these little lights flashing and all these questions being thrown at me at the same time. So you have to be the master of your technology. That is today's EA. Not only are we creating presentations for our executives, sometimes we're even presenting them. We recognize their priorities and we need to schedule their items accordingly. So we basically have to understand what your executive priorities are. And when those meetings are coming in, what can you keep and what can you let go of? That's the new game change. You have to be very specific to your industry. You have to understand it. You have to be experienced in human resources and accounting functions. We are also the purchases. We are doing budgeting. We are creating policies and procedures. It is no longer the administrative assistant or executive assistant of yesterday. We're not fools. We are now part of our team. We are an integral part of our team. Going out there and looking at all the information, I have come across an HR manager she writes books. She's a leader in her field. Her name is Susan M. Heathfield, and you could Google her. And she actually wrote a pretty powerful statement, and I'm sharing with you up on screen, about agility is your willingness to change, your ability to change, and the nimbleness you exhibit as you adopt to change. And it has to be quickly. It is key to your future. And today's assistant needs to embrace that, because we are such a fast-moving world right now. The new world order is you have to be nimble. You have to be able to keep up with the software. Years ago, when they used to roll out things, you used to get training classes, and now instead you get a computer link that says this is what we're using starting next week, and you got to be quick to adapt. Not to ramble on more. Oops, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. I have some key takeaways here, and things that I think you should think about anyway. It's a changing world, and we must recognize that we are not just gatekeepers and calendar managers. We are key members of our executive team, and technology and increased responsibilities will definitely present their own challenges day to day, and you need to know how to roll with it. So take your training. Technology is the key to all of our future, and you need to master it. You have to embrace changes for your own benefit. You have to fully understand the industry where you work, because that will define your career path, no matter what industry it is. And again, that is if you want to grow out of the EA field. I personally been there, done that, and I love being in the EA field. And the way to be at the top of your game, again, is you have to understand your industry. You have to be up to date with current affairs to keep yourself relevant. You want to be tech savvy and hone your communication skills. You want to be open to new discoveries and replace outdated ways of things to work more faster, stronger, and be more efficient. One phrase that always grated on my nerves, especially the last 10 years, is when I walk into a department or a team and there's somebody that's been sitting in that role for like 10 years or whatever, and they tell you, you see that there's a faster way of doing something. I took my certification in Microsoft, and when I started working with people that weren't there yet, and you would bring up some pointers, you get, well, this is the way we've always done it. And that is one thing you will never hear me say, ever, because you want to be open to change, and you want to embrace your peers. You want to be open to ideas. Just because you've always done something this way doesn't mean that there isn't a better and faster way to do it. You want to participate in team meetings. You book your meetings for your executives, and there's also team and departmental meetings. You want to make the time to join those meetings, because you are part of the team. You're not someone standing on the sidelines. If your executive doesn't feel that you should be included, you need to speak up. Find your voice, because you could only support them to be better if you understand what their world is doing. You could contribute to your team if you understand what they're doing. And you can also connect dots, because you are the one that are wrapping your arms around your executive's world. And you see a lot of different moving pieces, so you need to be able to understand what the department does, what your executive does, and connect the dots. Important, now that we're all home and it is New World Order, you need to find work-life balance. We're all in our homes now. So some of you have children at home, some of you have families at home. You need to know when to shut it on, the job, and when to shut it off. Make sure that you find your work-life balance, or you will leave yourself to burn out. And finally, if you should seek out, and this is the truth, you need to enjoy what you do. You need to engage in a career that finds your passion. You know, you want to work for an organization that you truly believe in, because then it makes the ride so much better. And I was lucky enough to find that. And I hope all of you out there understand what I'm saying when I say that. So my slide will be, my slides are out there. I have links on there where I grabbed some of this info that has a wealth more info out there for all of you. It is a new world. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. And if you have any questions, you just let me know. With that, I believe we are going to be turning it over to Sandra.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Lucy. So Sandra,
You're
over
welcome.
to you.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you very much. I am going to share my slides as well. And I'm going to, hold on, just make sure that I get there. Okay, I just lost my Zoom screen. Hold on one second. Let me just make sure I get back there. There it is. Okay, so let me just share my thing. While I'm getting my slide presentation up, let me just tell you a little bit about me, because what I have done is I spent almost 20 years in the administrative world. So I have almost 20 years of experience doing what you do. And it's an unbelievable, wow, I can't seem to get back to my Zoom screen. Wow, I'm not sure why. Wow, okay, I had this, I've been doing Zoom presentations now for months, as many of you are or have been, and I'm not sure why I just can't seem to get back to where I need to be without getting out of here we are. Wow. Okay, I'm just going to talk because I just can't get my presentation up. So anyway, I spent almost 20 years in the corporate world as an executive assistant. I started out at the very basic level. I was a receptionist, and I went all the way up to executive assistant to the CEOs of 3 different national and international companies. And since that time, I have now transitioned to become a speaker. I've been speaking for the last 20 years. And I have been doing presentations to administrative professionals for the last 18. I've done about 125 programs for over 30,000 administrative professionals in 41 countries, either virtually or in person. So I love this field. I love you guys. And it's just an amazing thing to be here. What I want to share with you today are a few things, and I will make sure that you get the slides later on from the organizers of this conference. But the first thing that I want to make sure that you understand is this. We've heard it several times, and many of you are chiming in with the same sentiment, that we have transitioned now to executive partners, strategic partners with our leaders. And that is the biggest change that's happened for us. We're no longer doing just the basic tasks that we did way back. We're doing many more things that are more strategic. But here's the thing. In order to be a strategic partner, we have to flip not only the way we think about our jobs, but the way we talk about our jobs. We have to now, if we're going to be taken seriously as an executive strategic partner, and we want a seat at the executive table, then we have to speak the language of our leaders. We have to stop thinking in tasks and duties, and we have to start thinking in value. And I do a presentation I often called indispensable or invaluable. I'd like to start with a little story for you to show you what I'm talking about. Years back, there was a friend of mine who had Okay, something has changed. Years ago, there was a friend of mine who was a training director in a company, and his company acquired a second company. Now, you know what happens when an acquisition takes place, right? Sometimes there are more than one person who are in the same position, but there's only room for one. So as a training director, what happened was he found himself in the position where there were two of them. And now this was back in the late 70s, early 80s when he was doing this. So you have to think about what the technology was back then. There was no PowerPoint. There was no LCD projectors. No, the big technology of the day, and those of you who were around in the corporate world at that time know what I'm going to say. The big technology for presentations was the overhead projector. Now, the overhead projector, oh, there we go. We have my, this is a sheet that I'm going to be giving to you afterwards too. So the overhead projector was the big new technology of the day. And what it was you had to have you typed on your typewriter what your slides were. I see Lucy smiling. I think many of you are probably smiling. And then what you had to do is you brought it to this machine that copied it onto a plastic transparency. Then you brought it to the overhead projector. You put the plastic on this piece of glass. It shone a light up, and boom, there was your image on the wall with the light shining through it, right? Yeah, this is a great piece of technology. It stood there at the ready, waiting for you to turn it on, only to blow a bulb the second you did that. So it was unbelievable, but that's what we had to use. But the thing was, the training department was the only department that had the slides, that the machine to make the transparencies. So the executive assistant to the CEO of the company at that time had to create a deck for her leader. And in the deck was the list of everybody who was going to be retained and everybody who was going to be let go, because there were now more than one person for each job. So she brings the deck to the training department. The training director starts making all of the slides for him, and lo and behold, he sees his own name on the list of people to be cut. Holy cow. Yeah, no data security, nothing back then. So he's got two choices now. He can either go to the CEO and say, how can you do this to me? I can't believe it. I've been here for 18 years. Or he can do what he did, which was to wait a couple of days. And he remembered that he had helped within the last year. He had helped the CEO to hire two people who needed special skills. And not only did he know the skills that were needed so well that he could train them on it, but he also helped them pick the two people they were going to hire for the position. And he knew they were doing great. So a couple of days after he sees this deck, he sees the CEO in the hallway, little chit chat, then he drops the bomb and he says, so how are those two guys working out for you? Boom. What did he do? He asked a question to which he already knew the answer. He knew the CEO was going to say, wow, they're working out great. Thank you so much for your help in hiring and training them. See, this is the important point. What he did was he brought to the memory of the CEO the value he brought to that position. See, not everybody had those skills, and not everybody had them to the degree that this gentleman had them. The position of training director was indispensable. They needed one. But who filled that position was going to be the one who was invaluable, who brought extra value to the table. Once he reminded the CEO of the value he brought to the table with the skills, the knowledge, the expertise, all of the talents that he brought to the table, the CEO prepares his final deck. His assistant brings it down to the training department. The training director starts creating the final deck, and lo and behold, his name is no longer on the list to be cut. The other training director was going to be cut. You see, this is what we have to do. As administrative professionals, we are so used to talking logistics, tactics. We're the ones who have to get things done, so we have to think in those terms. Otherwise, when they give us something that they want to do to accomplish one of their strategies or their objectives, it'll never get done unless we think of the logistics. But that's not how we need to speak. We need to speak in terms of value, strategy. What initiatives does that executive need to accomplish? Because if we don't talk in those terms, they don't understand the value that we're bringing to the table. So the one big thing I want you to do is to think about the tasks that you do and the duties that you do. And you can write them in a column. List, say, the top 10 things that you do. Then I want you to think of, how do I do them differently, better, faster, cheaper than anyone else does them? And if you're not sure, all you have to do is listen to when people kind of walk over to what you're doing. And if anybody ever says to you, hey, I didn't know you could do that, or you could do that way, bingo, there's a huge hint to you that you are probably doing it differently than other people do. See, we always undervalue what we do. We think that just because we do it, it means that everybody must do it. So we don't put any big value on it, but we don't realize that we do it differently or better. And now once you write out how you do it differently or better, then I want you to write out the value that that adds to the organization and to your leader by your doing it that way. Maybe you're great at negotiating. Maybe you're great at technology. Maybe you're great at smoothing things over, being diplomatic, creating beautiful communications that help clearly explain complicated concepts. What do you do best? You know, I think it was Mallory talk about the superpower of the CEO, and that's you. Your superpower is, what are you best at? What are the things that you do? Where do you add so much value that they cannot possibly think of you as what I term a commodity? A commodity is something that exists everywhere. If you are merely a commodity and you do everything that you do the same way everyone else does it, well, then all they have to do is say, you know what, get somebody cheaper, younger, less experienced. I don't care. They're going to come in here and just push the buttons anyway. Anyone will do. But if you really want to be a strategic partner, then you have to make sure that you're speaking their language and helping them understand the value that you bring to the table. Because when you are an asset, not a commodity, no one else will do. That's the position that we are in. That's the position we need to be in, because we cannot help them achieve their strategic objectives if we don't get to the position where we can speak their language, help them understand the value that we bring to the table, so they start asking for our opinions and our input and our suggestions. Because the thing that I've found, there are a few things that I have found with technology and the changing role of the executive and personal assistant. And going along with the slides that you will see later on, the first thing is that technology has changed everything. Back in the day, when I had to do technology to help them figure out which 2 new companies they wanted to start, I was looking up all kinds of company information. I had to drive to the library. I had to look things up in magazines and newspapers and microfilm. Anybody here use microfilm? The microfiche readers? Holy moly. I mean, what we had to do research then, now it's a piece of cake. So we can leverage our time by just using the technology available to do the research that they need. And you can do research too. If you want to see some of the other things that other industries are doing, other organizations are doing, there are so many articles. I think Lucy mentioned reading Harvard Business Review. There are so many magazines out there that will tell you what companies like yours are doing and give you ideas you can even pass along if you hear a great idea. You know, sometimes we have fantastic ideas, but our leaders don't always listen. But do you know that I heard a story about, it was an employee, don't know if it was an executive or an assistant, but it was some kind of frontline employee at a cell phone company early on. And she was complaining one day about the fact that she couldn't even call her own family on her own company's plan without going broke, because it cost money to make every single cell phone call at the beginning. Well, somebody listened and said, whoa, wait a minute. How do we help this woman? She's our employee. We don't want her going broke using our cell service. So bam, guess what was invented? The Fave 5, the family talk plans, all of the plans that allowed you to call people, like maybe your top 5 people, for free, evolved out of one employee's comment, and the company listened. They've made billions from that one idea, but we have to help them see the value of the ideas. So a couple of things. You can look online and do research on what other companies are doing, companies in your industry. Brush up on that. You can also look online. You can go to tons of jobs websites like Career Builder and Indeed and Monster and all kinds of things, and look at what other executive assistants are doing. They post the job descriptions, they post the salary ranges. You can get great ideas of how you can serve your executive at a higher level just by looking at what other people are doing to serve their executives at a higher level. And by the way, those job descriptions will show you what the executives are looking for in their assistants. And if you've been in your job for a long, long time, I want you to look at your own job description. Has it ever changed in 10 years, 15, 20? Are you doing anything that resembles what you were hired for? Your annual performance reviews are going to be limited by what they think you're doing. And if your job description isn't up to date, they're not going to know what you're really doing. So take a look at your own job description and figure out what you're doing. You will show the added value you're bringing to the table just by seeing how your job has advanced over the years, and that will help you get better raises at performance review time as well. You can also look at, there are tons of administrative blogs. There's one called Admin to Admin. Office Dynamics has one. All Things Admin, Practically Perfect PA. I have a blog that's talking about service and all kinds of things, not just specifically to administrative professionals, because I do a lot of leadership and customer service programs too, but you can look for blogs too. So do your research, because technology has changed everything. Now, the second thing that I've noticed I wanted to share with you is that not only has technology changed everything, but especially what we're finding now in this COVID-19 age, it has the capacity to render us somewhat irrelevant. I'm hearing things, I'm speaking to hundreds of administrative professionals at this time, and I'm hearing things on both sides of the aisle. Oh, I am so busy now, I can't even breathe, and I don't know what to do because my leader is doing things now that he or she never would have done if we were in the office, but I feel like I'm being cut out of meetings, cut out of tasks and processes. I am afraid that when I go back, if they've gone this long without me, they're not going to think they need me when I go back. Are any of you in that kind of position? It's just incredible to see the range of emotions that admins are going through right now, no matter what level you're at. So I want you to think about, what is your leader doing right now from home that they never would have done in the office, or maybe that they did do in the office, but now they have so many other things on their plate. Can you take something off their plate? How can you help them? Can you talk to them about the fact that, yeah, on the surface, it may look like it's easier for you to do your own travel arrangements or your own meeting arrangements or your own calendar, but then I spend 3 hours every day unclogging the double and triple bookings, or making things easier because now you're running over on time because you can't get everything done. So I want you to look at the value that you can add and ask yourself and ask your leader, what is the monetary and productivity impact of him or her doing things at their pay salary, their pay scale, that you should be doing at yours? If you think about it, you can put it into terms they will understand. If you save them, let's say, and I take me as an example, I used to do my own travel arrangements, but my VA does them for me now. I don't know why I resisted for so long, because I was an administrative professional. I knew the value and I still resisted. It's amazing what human nature does to you. But when I finally let go of it and let her do it, even just the 10 or 15 minutes it took me to research something, if I'm doing 50 trips a year, how much is that at my salary versus her salary? And even though they say, well, I like to just look at it. Well, she never books anything without giving me, here are your options. And I can just boom, 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 skim through the options. I tell her what I want, and she does it. She is even checking me in for flights, not now because I'm not traveling right now, but back when I was traveling, she would check me in for my flights 24 hours ahead because I couldn't always get on the computer or a cell phone in order to do that. The productivity, the sense of relief, the monetary impact, put it into terms that they can understand. If you can make a task better or eliminate a task that doesn't need to be done anymore, or change the way something is done, put it into the number of hours that used to be used by the average salary of the number of people that were doing it, and you can see you can save your company thousands and thousands of dollars every year just in productivity increases. The other thing is that the COVID-19 situation has actually helped us change the no that we used to get as a matter of course when we would try to suggest something new as an administrative professional. It's changing that no to yes, because no longer can they say, well, that's impossible. Oh, they used to say working at home was impossible, but look at us now, right? So now we're all being forced into the situation where the formerly impossible is now not only possible, but completely normal and probably continuing at some level, even when we go back to whatever normal is going to look like later on, right? So this has given us an opportunity to actually be more effective when we suggest improvements, because we can fall back on the fact that, you know, hey, look, we're changing a lot of things. Do I have your permission to try this? How about if we do this? Have a discussion with your leader and say, look, I think I have an idea for how we might be able to do this differently or better, or here's how I can work more effectively, or even just ask the question, how can I be a better strategic partner for you? If you even have a strategy call for 5 or 10 minutes every morning, you can set the tone for the day. If they're doing their calendar arrangements, you can find out, then you can just use that time for the most critical things. What are the things we need to focus on today to be able to be successful today in accomplishing whatever you need to do today? So it's helping us be more flexible. It's helping us to be able to suggest things more easily and get our ideas accepted, but we still need to present the business case. Never present an idea because it's, oh, I just like to do that, or everybody else is doing that, or somebody else did. No, what is the benefit to them and the organization? Remember everybody's favorite radio station, WIIFM. What's in it for me? That's what everybody's favorite radio station is. That's what they want to know. So you need to tell them what's in it for them and the company, not just, oh, it'll make it easier for me. No, okay, well, here are the productivity gains I can do. And because I couldn't get that done last week, if I do this way, I'll be able to get it done next time for you in the right time frame, or whatever the business case is. So I just want to remind you, as we go through all these changes, we're trailblazers. And what trailblazer has ever gotten an easy yes? No one. But I thank heaven for the trailblazers who came before us and paved the way for us to be able to do what we do today. And we can serve as trailblazers for future generations as well. So go ahead and be a trailblazer. Don't forget to speak the language of your executives. Never talk in tasks and duties, talk in outcomes, benefits, value, strategy. Connect all your tasks to something they're trying to accomplish. Higher productivity, less cost, higher employee morale, greater employee retention. You know how much it costs to replace an employee. It's up to 2.5 to 4 times their annual salary just to replace an employee. So if you can do something to keep people from leaving, you can do that. So just go ahead and be that trailblazer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandra. That was really awesome. Thank you so much for your time. We just want to remind the attendees again, if you have any questions, please write them down in the Q&A box. And if you would like to ask something live, just let us know and we will unmute your microphones. So before we start taking the questions, we have just 2 questions here that came in. So I will read it out, so our panelists could help us, answer. The first question is, how do you get your executive to support you when you want to get better at your job by using the recent technology other executive assistants are using? So that's the first question. I don't know if anyone who would like to answer from the panelist board.
I'm sorry, using the what technology?
Like the new technology and resources that are available now. So how do you get your executive to actually support you in case they have to pay for it or you have to take some special courses? So how do they support you? How can you get them to support you to actually pay for this or encourage you to go through it?
Do you want to take this, Mallory or Lucy?
Go ahead, Sandra.
What? Of course I have an idea. You know, I'm a speaker, so they have a saying, we should get all t-shirts that say, help, I'm speaking and I can't shut up. So give me to shut up sometime, just let me know. But anyway, how do you get your executive to do that? Well, again, this goes back to what I was just talking about. You need to build the business case. Why do you want to learn that technology? What is it going to do for them? How can you demonstrate that they will get, I'm going to say, you know, whenever I do a program, I try to give 10 times whatever you're paying me to come out there and speak to your people. I try to give 10 times the value. So how many times the value are they going to get for their return on the investment? Many technologies, in fact, many administrative conferences, the leaders put out there a letter to the executives that presents the business case for you. So if you want to look at some of those, you can see how they're positioning that, but it's all about positioning the value so that they understand they're not just putting money out at this cost center. No, they're investing in a valuable asset in you, and you are going to bring more benefit than they will ever pay for monetarily. That's my suggestion.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. Mallory or Lucy, you want to add anything to that? Or I can move to the next question.
The other thing I would add is, I'm not sure everyone else, but like we have mid-year reviews where we go through, you know, what our objectives are and where we are on point. And that might be a good opportunity for you to open that window to let them know what training you want and what the benefit would be, just to throw it out there. Because, you know, your development is needed. If you want to stay on top of your game, you need the development. So it's a good time to open that line of communication during your mid-year or whenever you're reviewing your objectives.
Great. Thank you. Then I would go to the next question we have here. And this person's asking, how do you deal with a very difficult executive who feels like you never do things right? Do you have any idea on how to strengthen the relationship between the executive assistants and the executive?
Put them in a box.
I love it.
I can take that if you don't have a quick answer there, Lucy.
Go right ahead.
I think it all comes down to alignment. We're always going to have those people that are difficult to deal with. Even people in our own personal lives, we've always had people that are difficult. And once we find that common ground, we realize, oh, hey, we're best friends. It can be that same kind of transition, maybe not the best friends point, but at least a working relationship. So it does come down to, like Sandra said, getting that alignment, getting that value, creating your own value, and making sure that they understand what your job role is and you understand it too, and making sure that what you think you are doing is the right thing that they think you're doing. So sometimes that disconnect comes from that interpretation of that job description and that job role, where your strengths lie, where their strengths lie, and them just saying, well, you're just not doing it the right way. Well, I'm doing it. The task is getting done. It just might not be that same way. So I'm not entirely sure of the entire situation, but the best way to do it is to just say, go back to your job description, look at what it is saying and how you're interpreting it, and maybe having that alignment meeting and just saying, hey, look, I've noticed that I'm struggling with making sure that things are going fluidly. Do you mind if we just sit down for half an hour together and I get some more clarity as to how you expect things to go, and we can get that alignment so we can move forward in a really productive way. And sometimes just opening that communication, sometimes we just have to say, hey, I'm struggling, help me, and they'll help. We can't always say you're the problem, but it's our job to go, I need to be better. I need to help you more. How can I do that? And getting that alignment and that clarity sometimes just takes that edge off.
Communication. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And in fact, communication is definitely pretty much the only way to resolve something like that. And unfortunately, it's a difficult communication because you're not sure what they're going to say. But I would specifically ask, don't just come out and make it a general, you know, it seems like I can't do anything right, or you're not happy with any of my things. I would bring one specific thing in and say, I'd like to have a conversation with you about this, you know, and overestimate the time that you're going to need. If you think you're going to need 10 minutes, ask for 20, because you know what's going to happen. You know, at 10 minutes, they're going to be like, you know, and they're not even going to be listening to you if you're going over that by a minute. So just try to get time on the schedule. And I would ask them, there seemed to be some dissatisfaction with how this came out. So I'd like to talk about that specifically and find out how I can do it in the future, or do things like this that will be more to what you're expecting. So I really want to understand what you were expecting and how I didn't measure up to that, because sometimes it could be something as simple as you did it a different way, like Mallory said. Other times it could be that they weren't clear about what they wanted you to do. And if you have a project assigned to you at all, I would just say, to avoid this in the future, at the end of that project assignment discussion, say, all right, so here's what you're looking for from me. And then you lay out the objectives and maybe even put it in writing so that you can say, okay, I just want to make sure I'm clear about what I'm doing. So, and you can even ask them in that talk. At the end of the talk about what did I do last time that you didn't feel was up to par. So in the future, what I'd like to do is when you give me an assignment, I would love to just clarify at the end of it to make sure I understand your objectives perfectly. Will that be okay with you? So get permission going forward to clarify those things, because sometimes they think they're being clear and they're not. And then when you do the clarification discussion, say, here, this is what you want from me, right? No, that's not what I want. Okay, let's clear that up right now before you even start. So I would try that.
Great, thank you, Sandra. Mallory, you can take the first question.
Okay, so the question came in: how do you manage office dynamics when a female director is trying to throw you off your throne as the executive's right-hand confidant and trying to replace you? That's a tough one.
Wow.
I'm actually not sure that I'm the right one to answer that.
Yeah,
anyone. Do you have a better one?
Anyone from the speaking board can answer as well.
I've actually been in that position once, and I'm happy to say that she kind of blew herself up, which was nice. So, you know, again, communication. I was lucky enough to work for the person for a while before she came on board, and you know, I always say, and it's like what Sandra said, you always have to explain what the goal is and what the cost effectiveness is of something. And it's not about putting on a show. It's about knowing what you're doing. And, you know, I'm not saying be disrespectful and know where your place is. You are a strategic partner. And of course, when you have a director come in and start trying to undermine everything that you're doing, I did sit back because arguing with someone is not going to make things better. You know, I would express why I wanted something done one way, and of course, you know, the director wanted something done her own way, and then after one or two times of that blowing up, the problem went away on its own. So be confident in what you're doing. Show emotional intelligence. Don't, you know, make scenes if you could avoid it. And don't be disrespected, but definitely keep your emotions intact. Be confident in what you do, and just step back, because at the end of the day, they prove themselves, you know, and you'll prove yourself. Hoping that makes sense anyway.
I love what you just said, Lucy, and I'd like to just add on a couple of things. One is, tagging on to what you said, when people behave a certain way, I wrote an article actually on gracefully dealing with disrespect. And one of the things, it's been an incredibly impactful article. I get tons and tons, even 2 or 3 years after I've written it, I get lots of comments on it. So you might search for that on Google too. I just give some examples there, but 2 big things. Number one, what Lucy just said is so correct. If they're behaving disrespectfully to you, they're probably behaving disrespectfully to other people as well, and they show their true colors. So don't ever, let yourself go down to their level. But the other thing that I found is sometimes when somebody's behaving that way and you do have to continue to work with them, kill them with kindness. Just kill them with kindness, just, oh, what can I do for you? What can I do to help you?
Long.
Yeah. I mean, it's unbelievable when you do that. It's better than confronting them and saying, what are you trying to do? Just kill them with kindness. Act as though you're, like everything they say is really great. You just really, you don't have to go too overboard, but I mean, just think about how you're responding to them and just say, wow, that's a really great idea. Would you like to propose that to so-and-so? And give them some opportunity. If you really think it's a great idea, give them some opportunity to be able to get to the person they're trying to impress and let them do it. It's not going to take anything away from you. In fact, your leader hopefully will recognize the fact that, wow, you don't bring a whole lot of things to me, but you wrote this one and I appreciate it because that was a great idea. So your leader might appreciate handling some of the stuff, and you don't have to act as the gatekeeper all the time who keeps people away. You can let appropriate things in and honor their contributions as well, which is why they hired the team, so just kill them with kindness.
I would also mention, like, if they're not aware of that situation, like making sure that there is that communication. It all comes back to communication and saying, hey, what is the relationship supposed to be with this person? Just getting some clarity. I've had situations where I've had multiple reporting lines. I was holding a couple of different seats and people were just expecting very different things from me, but I was getting told from the CEO, this is your role. And that wasn't being cascaded down. So there was a lot of trying to push me out or not quite understanding where things were at because of that lack of communication from the top down. Because he'd said it, he thought, you almost know it, right? So coming back and saying, hey, look, there seems to be some misunderstanding. Maybe it's me, maybe it's them, but I just want to clarify, is this okay? Should I be accepting that this person's treating me this way? And as an assistant, it's our job to filter out that gossip and that pettiness and actually be that ear on the ground to these executives and bring those real concerns to them. Because sometimes they get blind to what's actually going on inside of their organization. And it is our job to bring up these things in a way that's not tattletaling. It's not bringing up all that nasty garbage that they don't want to hear. They could watch Coronation Street if they wanted that. They need to know, is this impacting my business? Is this impacting my people? And how do we make those adjustments? And because you are their assistant and it's impacting you, if that reporting line is direct from you to them, it is within your right to be able to go to them and say, hey, I have this concern. Is this valid or not? This is how I'm handling it. This is how I'm comfortable handling it. I'm going to kill them with kindness. I'm ignoring some of the nastiness and I'm going to continue to do my job. And here's my value. Is this acceptable? And sometimes they don't even realize that it was happening. And I've had that happen where they didn't realize that that's how I was being treated. And they went, excuse me, what have you been dealing with for the last year and a half? And they put a stop to it. So just making sure that maybe they don't know what's going on and coming to them with the emotion taken out of it.
Right.
Okay, thank you so much, Mallory. We have one more question here in the Q&A box. It said, how do you build a relationship with your executive when there is a middle person who acts as a filter between you and the executive at the executive's request? So any of you can go ahead and answer.
Well, it looks like the other two are thinking a minute, but first thing that strikes me is that it's at the executive's request. So first of all, if it's at the executive's request, I'm not sure there's anything that can be done, in the long run. But I would be talking to, if you can get to the executive and you can ask them, tell them, look, there are times when I would like to be able to come to you directly. Is there a reason why I always need to go to so-and-so for this? Maybe you have a good relationship with so-and-so who's the filter, and maybe you can ask them so it doesn't appear like you're going over their head. And you can say, is there a reason why I can't talk directly with, Sandy on this particular item? I'm just trying to gauge how this process is supposed to work. And sometimes it feels like I'm overburdening you unnecessarily with things that I could just go and get him or her to answer directly. So don't make it look like you're just trying to get around them. But I mean, it sounds like it's an unnecessary burden on the filter. And it sounds like it's an unnecessary productivity waste of your time, their time, and the executive's time. Because if you have to bring something to the filter and then they bring it to the executive and the executive even has one question, well, now what? Do they go back to the filter? They come back to you? I mean, holy mackerel, if it's a complicated issue, maybe you can just show the productivity gains you could get just by being able to have a discussion. Or maybe you could just ask for time once a week on their calendar to discuss a few things and bring most things to the filter, but ask them, maybe on this particular project, can we have a 20-minute or 30-minute meeting once a week so I can update you directly? And if you have questions, you can just ask me, things like that. That's my initial thoughts.
Yeah, I think understanding that why is crucial. Reading that and hearing it, I'm very concerned and confused as to usually and typically that assistant relationship, it's a direct line of communication, and that's the intention of having that assistant, is to ensure that that person knows what's going on at all times. So I would be curious as to what the why is, as to why they feel like they need that middle person. Is it a security blanket? Have they had bad experiences in the past? And maybe it's a conversation with the filter if you've got a great relationship with them. And if not, maybe it is taking that time and saying, hey, I got no problems with this if this is what you want. I'm just curious as to why things are set up this way, because if I understand the why, I can be more productive and I can keep moving forward, and putting it in that context of, I need to understand so I can move forward. Because when we get hung up on certain things and we're not understanding the why behind them, we struggle and we spin our wheels going, but this doesn't make sense, but this doesn't make sense. And we get stuck in that rut. And the moment someone explains the why, it clicks and we're gone. We're shooting down towards the finish line. And I always tell, I'm very open with my colleagues. And when I'm not understanding something, I said, okay, I got to stop you there. I need to understand why this is the way it is, because it doesn't make sense to me. And I'm not questioning the judgment call or your decision. I just need to understand what's happened in the past, that this is what we're doing now. And once I understand that maybe there's a whole past relationship as to why this has to be this way, now I can start working around that to create that value, to maybe create two channels instead of one through a filter. You know what I mean? Maybe you do need this other filter person, but they're not quite confident in your abilities yet, or you're not confident in theirs, vice versa. However, that relationship, without a lot of context, it's really difficult to say. But I agree with Sandra, finding that why, and maybe it is just past, but being able to define that will really help you understand how to work around those things and actually start to build that relationship with that executive if it's insecurities on their part too.
Totally agree.
All right, great. Thank you so much. That was the last question for today. So I would like to thank everyone for attending this webinar. Thank you, Sandra, Lucy, and Mallory. It was really eye-opening, and I hope that everyone enjoyed it. So we have the video streamed on YouTube. So if you want to go back to the recording, you can just go to the link that we sent you before, and you can